Good morning. Happy Monday to everybody. It's been a while. It's been over a week, actually, guys. It's been over a week, but I'm back. I'm back live streaming. It's been a while. A lot has happened. A lot has happened. I will not be touching on a lot of it. It's good old real estate news, especially this time of our season in real estate. Seems like there's all kinds of stuff happening. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to go over a few of the things that's happened since I've been gone. I think it's important that we do. Hope everybody's been doing well. Let me know in the comments how life has been, what you've been up to. Welcome into the live stream. So if this is your first time here, this is the part of the show where we just kind of hang out for a few minutes, let the kind of, algorithms do their thing. Everybody kind of settles in. So we just hang out for just a little bit before we get started on the show. But to kind of give you an update about what we do here, if this is your first time in, I basically read real estate news. I break it down, give you my observations. We discuss things as a group. We talk through stuff, and we just have a good old time. We laugh a little bit, do all that kind of stuff. I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been up to, though. So I have traveled around my state, visiting offices, connecting with people all last week. It was a really good week. It was needed. We had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, a lot of work, a lot of hard stuff, but also good stuff. And life was busy. So that happened. School got started back. We homeschool, so it's chaos around here. When school starts back, my wife has a bunch to do. She has a workload that's pretty extensive. And so she's getting the kids back in school. We have one fully in college now, full-time college student. Moved away into college. We have another one that is 17. She is taking college classes and commuting to a college. So doing homeschool, but also taking college classes. So she just left this morning for her first class. So that's interesting. And then my youngest, which is 10, she goes off and does co-op on Mondays, and they do that, and they have homeschool the rest of the week. So all that's kind of going on. I had to get everybody out the door. But like last week was kind of getting everything together and organized, ready to start school. So I'm sure if you're out there and you got kids going to school, life is chaos in the mornings. It's just chaos in the mornings. And you got to figure out that new routine. So we also got to go up and visit my son at college, my middle child. She had a cross-country race in the city he's at. And on Saturday. So we drove up on Friday, got to spend the whole day with him on Friday. And also on Saturday, that was actually really good. Good to see the kid. Usually he's watching this, but he might be in class right now. If you are, Will, love you, man. Have fun. But enjoy class. So yeah, that was last week. I've been doing all kinds of things. Now what's going on? What are we going to be talking about today? That's the question. What are we going to be talking about today? So we have, I will talk about interest rates briefly. We'll talk about what that is and what's going on there. And then we're going to get into, I'm going to reread an article about the 8th Circuit affirms the settlement in the Sitzer-Burnett Commission lawsuit. So if you don't know what that is and you're in real estate, you must have just got into real estate because this has been something that's been going on for a few years. Basically, it's now why we have buyer representation agreements, and we got to have those signed by every single buyer. There's a lawsuit that was levied against the National Association of Realtors and a lot of brokerages. They had a settlement. And then all these little piggyback lawsuits kind of came out of that. So we're going to talk about kind of what the 8th Circuit Court has ruled in response to that. So we're going to talk about what that means and what is happening there. We're going to then talk about the economy as in general, and we're going to touch on a few different topics. We're going to talk about the game is over. Sellers are facing reality on pricing and backing off unrealistic demands. In other words, we're seeing an adjustment in pricing. We're seeing that sellers are beginning to understand a little bit more about what their home is actually worth, and buyers are coming back in to buy because the prices are somewhat more affordable. We're not all the way there yet. We still have a balancing kind of taking place, but we're going to be talking about that. Then we'll read through an article by the National Association of Realtors titled, As Mortgage Rates Mostly Hold Steady, Agents Say Waiting Could Cost Buyers. So we're going to talk about a general idea about the economy, what's going on. And then if we have time, I always endeavor to try to do four articles. I usually get to 3. It says, homeowners are digging in for 5 years, a threat to buyers or a hidden lifeline. So we'll see what that has to say if we get there. Anyway, with all that being said, my name's Adam. Welcome in. We're going to get started. Let me reposition a couple things here. And guys, just so you guys know too, is I love communication, like chatting and stuff like that. So like if we are going full stream and I'm talking nonstop, feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind whatsoever. I like engaging with you guys. So just throw a comment in the chat. I'll stop, address. If you got a question about real estate, feel free to ask. I've been in real estate for over 20 years. I love being involved with agents and helping them. I love it. I absolutely love it. All right. Everything else being said, let's go ahead and jump into the show. Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam. Today, we're going to be cutting through the noise. We're going to look to get to the truth in the news, look at the data, and I'm going to give you some of my observations and where I believe you can find opportunity. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our first story. And really, the first story is not our story just yet. We're going to talk about interest rates. So let's go ahead and jump into what is going on with interest rates. If you guys know, and you guys, I say it all the time, I quickly just every single day, every day, I go on to Mortgage News Daily and I just take a quick gander at the interest rate. It's not that it's the only benchmark, but it does give me a quick view about what's going on in the real estate market. And I like that. I can kind of just see if it's rising and it's falling, that kind of stuff. And you can begin to notice trends, and that's helpful. If you can see trends, what's going on, you're better to advise clients because they might just be reading headlines and you're watching the trends. So what are we looking at right now? 30-year fixed rate, 6.77. That's what we're at currently. 15 years, 6.61. 30-year FHA is 6.33, and 30-year VA is 6.35. Really very marginal changes. I mean, we are hovering right around 6.6, 6.7. So that's where we're going to stay. One thing about Mortgage News Daily that's kind of fun to kind of get a bigger deep dive into real estate is they do have a lot of articles specifically in regards to the mortgage industry and interest rates. And they're kind of fun to quickly kind of read. You know, like that right here, it says mortgage rates drift modestly higher. The cool thing is it'll break this kind of down a little bit. They'll use graphs and knowledge, and it's always just short little blips. You know, you can read through the Mortgage News Daily in like 5 minutes, get a good update about what's going on in the mortgage side of things. It's just a great tool. And they have an app as well. You can download that app and check it out yourself. But it gives a good idea about what's going on in the market as far as the interest rates are concerned. Look, and the consumer just loves to focus on the interest rates. It's like do you see what the interest rates are? Like, can you imagine? That's where they're at right now. And that's all they talk about. And that's their only metric as what's going on in the economy. It's always fun. All right, let's get into our first article of the day. So we can get started here. Maybe I can get through 4 of them. All right. This first article here, this is an article in regards to the MLS and associations under the Inman News. It says the 8th Circuit affirms settlement in Sitzer-Burnett Commission lawsuit. It says the settlement included a $418 million payment by NAR, the National Association of Realtors, sweeping business practice changes. And we do know this. And I'm not going to go back and rehash every single thing that happened in this case. When it comes down to it, we now have these beautiful buyer representation agreements that everybody has to sign. Okay. That's what realtors have to operate by. They got to have every buyer sign these type of things. That is the biggest change that we had to deal with because of this lawsuit. Obviously, a lot of money was paid out. Didn't really affect individual realtors as much. It's just changed the standard of practice and the way we work. So that's what happened. But then because of that lawsuit, and this is typically what happens, is like once they were found guilty or they settled and this is the agreement, you have all these other piggyback type situations where someone else is like, well, hey, I didn't get in on this fight. And then they levy suit against those same things, hoping to win those cases as well. This is typically what happens. So that's what this article is going to be about. And the 8th Circuit Court did something that is very crucial to help us to understand what's actually happening here. So let's read. It says a federal appeals court on Wednesday upheld more than $1 billion in settlements and the sweeping commission rule changes that reshaped how homes are bought and sold in the U.S., rejecting 7 separate challenges. That's what happened. They rejected those other challenges. The 8th Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously affirmed the real estate industry's settlement in the Sitzer-Burnett Commission lawsuit, farther cementing the sweeping practice changes that took effect 2 years ago. So now we're not going to change anything. What happened is going to stay. That's what's going to happen. The order came after a series of appeals from groups that argued that consumers wouldn't get anywhere near sufficient value from the settlement, either monetarily or through its required business practice changes, and that it may actually leave them worse off. Okay, so there had people challenging this, said, you didn't go far enough. We want more, right? So they levied more and more stuff against it. So that's what happened. The practice changes address the challenged rules and attempt to remediate the harm. The 3-member panel of judges wrote, thus, we conclude that appellants have an injury in fact and that the requested relief addresses it. Based on the record, we conclude that the district court did not err in finding that the negotiated settlement provides benefit to the class members. In other words, you got what you were owed. The settlement included lump sum payments by the National Association of Realtors and large brokerages, as well as changes to how real estate commissions are negotiated and advertised. Quote, we are pleased with the court's order affirming the district court's decision to approve the settlement agreement. NAR said in a statement, we will continue to work to foster fair, transparent, and pro-consumer real estate markets while providing resources and value to our realtor members nationwide. Appeals are a standard and expected part of the legal process for a case as substantial as the Sitzer-Burnett. Yes, it wasn't surprising that all these other suits kind of started coming out because, look, it's like, hey, I want to jump on this bandwagon too. I want to try to get a piece of this pie. And so they kind of go a little more extreme and they levy more suits against it. And you hope and pray it doesn't go any farther, especially on our side. It's like, look, enough's enough. We've paid up. We've agreed to make practice changes that you deemed that was worthy of these changes. And that's what we did. So we need to stop there. So it's great. We applaud the judges here to rule in favor of that. Punishment was levied. Settlement was reached. Practices were changed. That should be it. And that's what we're seeing here. So we've been waiting for this report, to be honest. We've been waiting for this report to actually happen. A reversal threatened to unwind the release and potentially the business practice changes, keeping the industry exposed during a delicate time. It says NAR agreed to pay $418 million to settle the lawsuit. That settlement came after a jury sided with the home seller plaintiffs following a landmark trial in federal court in Kansas City in 2023. The jury had awarded the plaintiffs $1.78 billion in damages, an amount that could have been tripled to $5.3 billion. Now, you can see why they would want to make a settlement, right? As part of its settlement, NAR agreed to repeal the cooperative compensation rule that required brokers to offer compensation to buyer brokers on MLS listings. So if you're a realtor, you know what that means. If you're not, and you're just listening to me, which I have a lot of people that are not even real estate agents that just love real estate that might be listening. So basically, if we went back into 2023 and beyond and earlier, if I listed a property, I would have negotiated with my seller how much I would offer the buyer's agent if they brought a buyer to us. So we would come up with a percentage and we would agree to give an X amount of percent to the buyer's agent. So it was negotiated with the seller up front that the seller would, fit the bill for that and then pay some of that towards the buyer agent. Well, that's kind of what led to everything. It's like that was posted on the MLS and it created a whole thing. Well, they won this, they were winning their case. We then decided to settle. Now what's happened is basically commission itself. If I was to go list a property, I negotiate my commission with my seller. A buyer's agent negotiates the commission with their buyer, and the buyer signs a buyer rep agreement with all terms laid out and spelled out on exactly how payment's going to happen. So now, what really changed? Well, I would say what the biggest change is, there's absolutely more transparency to the way we do our business. That's the biggest change. Who pays for it? To be honest, it still comes back down to like the seller and stuff like that, because the seller is the one that owns the asset. What the buyer's willing to pay, they've got to finance. So, they come up with the money out of pocket and they pay for the buyer's agent. But the thing is, at least the commission is all exposed out front. Everybody knows what the cost is. Everybody knows what their fee is going to be. So that's the transparency part. Now, when you start negotiating a contract, that kind of stuff, most of the time, buyer's agents are still requesting that the seller pay the commission. The difference, though, is the buyer knows what the commission is. They know what the agent's going to earn. They understand that that's what their agreement says they have to pay. So they understand that's part of the closing costs. So that's what changed. All right. The settlement also required buyer agents to written. Okay, we talked about that. The ruling also made clear that the settlement includes brokerages that operate outside of NAR rules, and it specifically named Brown Harris Stevens as an opt-in brokerage that was covered. So anyway, the beautiful thing about this article here, and this is where we'll stop with this article, is that really the copycat cases are going to be dismissed. You'll still probably have some here pop up, maybe a different twist on those type of things. But really, the judges that ruled in this are basically just saying, like, the punishment has been levied. The industry has changed. There's now more transparency. People can see what they're paying. And there was a fine paid to those that suffered losses. So they said it did enough. That's the point here. So we can finally put this kind of behind us. We can focus ahead and work in the way we've been working now for the past three years now, I think. So great. It's good stuff. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. All right. Article number two. That wasn't too bad. It was not too bad. All right. So this article here is going to be by Realtor.com. And it says the game is over. Sellers are facing reality on pricing and backing off unrealistic demands. This is not a surprise to me. Matter of fact, if you go watch some of my live streams, I've been kind of saying, like, this year, I started saying it last year, but it's like a reset year. There's a little bit of this change in the market that's got to take place so we can hit kind of the new norm. And we're coming off like major inflation of sellers or the listing prices, and that inflation has caused an affordability gap. So if the homes that sit on the market can't be bought because the income is not justified for the purchase price, something's got to give. Well, income does not rise as fast as demand sometimes, and it takes a little bit longer for that to kind of catch up. Even though income has went up a little bit across the board, more in the private sectors of the market than it is the corporate world, regardless, it went up just a little bit. It's still not caught up with the high inflation of affordability that we see in these prices of these homes. So it's something has to give. So that's what this article is kind of getting at. It's getting at the point that there is a changing. There is still an off balance, but it's beginning to see signs of correction. And that's coming from the side of the sellers being more ready to negotiate on their price or listing it better and more accurately to what the market's going to bring. So let's get into this article. This article is written by Julie Gerstein. It says the game is over. Sellers are facing reality on pricing and backing off unrealistic demands. After a year of high interest rates and slow sales, home sellers are finally facing the music this summer and getting real about home prices. You're getting sellers that actually want to sell their house too. That's the thing. You're getting people that actually desire to sell their house. According to the Realtor.com economics team, last year was a cruel summer, marked by excess inventory, flagging sales, and a general sense that buyers and sellers couldn't connect on expectations. Now, a year later, rather than resist the cooling market, sellers have begun adjusting expectations and lowering their initial asking prices. Now, I'll pause for just a second too, because this is the educational side for real estate agents, is when you start seeing a market correction, one of the hardest things to do is accurately price a home. You don't have enough data to go on. The market sometimes corrects itself faster than the data provides. And when that happens, we end up having, skewed listing prices that maybe are higher than they should be based on the previous market because we just don't have enough data. But now what we're beginning to see, and this article kind of is alluding to this, is you're going to have better and better accurate data to be able to price homes more effectively. So I encourage you as real estate agents, get into your data of your MLS. Really get in there and see what's actually happening. Figure out what your average days on the market is, what your average selling prices are, what markets in your area are selling more than other, where's the highest turnover is. Get in there and watch those metrics. Those metrics help you price homes better. Therefore, you're moving more property. So when you start seeing this kind of shift happen, you're starting to get a little bit more data that's going to be more accurate to what the model is going to bring. So now's the time to get into the data, even if you don't like it. It's very important to get into it. It says in July, the median listing price was down 2.4% year over year. What's more, fewer than 40% of the active listings saw a price cut compared to 54% of listings in July 2025, signaling that sellers have begun to price homes more competitively from the start. So again, resetting the market, kind of a rebalancing taking place, getting better and closer. Last year, sellers were still pricing for the market they remembered, not the one buyers were actually facing. It says Realtor.com senior economist Jake Krimmel. This summer, they've been more realistic from day one and more willing to adjust when necessary. It says when price cuts are necessary, sellers are making their first reduction 3 to 4 days sooner than last year, on average 34 days in rather than 38 days on, with reductions averaging at least 1 percentage point smaller across all regions. So here's the thing too, is like, if you are a real estate agent that knows the data, and if you go in and you can assess a home with what it's worth and you can see the value there, and your gut instinct, because you've been watching the data, you're watching the trends, when that hits and you feel like the price of a home needs to be at this and the seller says it needs to be up here, and it's a big difference in price, one of the things I always encourage my agents, it's like, you don't necessarily want to turn down the listings. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes if that gap is so large and someone's being completely unrealistic, sometimes, guys, it's okay to walk away. And to be honest, a lot of times it's best that you do, because you're going to spend a lot of money marketing that property. You're not going to have a happy seller because you couldn't sell it because they're being unrealistic. We got to tell them what we think. We got to tell them as professionals what their home is worth, the best that we can. Only way we can do this by knowing the data. But the other side of this is like, if that's the case, if somebody is wanting to list their home above what you want to suggest, but maybe it's not so drastically large, then I would be very honest with them and say, look, my data and my gut and my experience is telling me this. Here's the thing, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I will agree to give a test market for you to test this price test your home at this price. But I'm only going to do that for maybe the first 2 weeks, because the first 2 weeks is the initial time you're going to get the most activity. And you need to explain to them too, it's like, by doing this, by not going by my advice, you're probably going to risk losing out on a possible quicker sale, because somebody else, the first 2 weeks is so crucial that they're going to dismiss it if we don't come out with the right price. But if you are adamant that this is what you want to list the home at, I will agree to do that. But I want to list it for 2 weeks only, maybe 1 week, and test it out. If we do not get buyer traffic or an offer at that moment in time, then I want to go ahead and work in an automatic reduction in the price. And if you look at this article too, look what it says. It says, when price cuts are necessary, sellers are making their first reduction 3 to 4 days sooner than last year, on average 34 days rather than 38. Here's the thing. If you beat the averages, if you go in there and it's like 14 days, then you're going to be reducing your home than the other competitors that came on the market at the same time you did before they do. You're going to capture the buyers in that buyer pool before they will, if they stick to this 34 days. If other agents out there letting things go for 30 days, sitting on the market, and they're not sold, if the house has already been renovated and there's nothing else that can be done, guess what, guys? It's the price. So reduce that price, get it on the market correctly, and sell it above the competitors. Don't wait 34 days. Don't wait 34 days. Anyway, I know that's a little bit of a rant, but man, guys, pricing is a majority of what we do. That helps us sell properties. It goes on to say that is good news for buyers who are seeing lower asking prices and more room to negotiate. But it's also good news for sellers. Pricing to today's demand is helping homes move and keeping more transaction alive in a high rate environment. So again, this helps everybody. If you have a seller that's truly wanting to sell, they're going to list it at the price that the market's going to bring. That's what's going to happen. And the buyers are winning here because the prices are coming back down into their affordability. So it's a win-win. The market continues to course correct. You could call it the great rebalancing. I've said that actually many times. Last year, sellers stubbornly held on to the idea that they could set prices at the same levels they had when interest rates were at 3. But with interest rates consistently over 6, they've had to face facts. It says this, and this is a quote, "As we sit today, sellers are more realistic," says Scott Payne, Executive Vice President and Managing Broker with Atlanta Fine Homes Sotheby's International Realty. He goes on to say, "The clearest evidence isn't what they say. It's the narrowing gap between list price and sold price we've seen this summer. When that spread tightens, it means sellers are starting closer to where the market actually is instead of testing a number and working their way back down." That's what I'm saying. I would agree 100% with that statement. Price correctly. And if they're going to do it and they're going to be above what you think it should be at, put a timeline in there and make it as close and as tight as you can. A week would be excellent. 2 weeks at the most. But get that reduction in there already. It ends with this. Wu says she's working with more sellers these days than in previous years. "I used to work with more buyers than sellers, and this year that's reversed, which is a sign of rising inventory and more competition among sellers. I'd characterize current seller behavior as pragmatic. divided, and patient. Sellers who need to sell are adapting to what buyers are actually willing to pay, and sellers who don't are standing their ground. And this is the thing too, is like what's also helping in this is not just the pricing and the price correction from where we are highly inflated. What's also helping this is that lock-in effect that we've talked about many times. And you hear about it. It's like, well, I can't afford to buy because I have a home that's at 2.5%, 3.5% interest. If I went out and bought now, I'd have to have a mortgage at almost 7%. So they make the argument like, well, I could never buy and sell. Well, as we get farther and farther away from those interest rates, you're getting 5, 6, 7 years now beyond where those interest rates exist. So we're only talking about 0.5 to 1% difference in mortgage rates. It's not as big of a factor as time goes on, because we got now 5 years ago, people don't have that great interest rate. So that's where we're kind of transitioning into that, right? So, and then of course, the other thing is as life circumstances change, those that bought a house, 6, 7 years ago, they needed that house at that time. But if they're raising kids, or maybe they had older adult kids in college, they don't have them anymore, whatever the case may be, maybe they now have expanded and they've now got kids and they need a bigger house. So these are all factors that are changing that lock-in effect. They're making people move. So as we get farther and farther away from those lower interest rates, things begin to kind of loosen up, and you kind of have this rebalancing. And that's kind of what this article is getting at. That's the whole point. And so it's looking good. I mean, it's looking pretty stable. It's nothing drastic. These price cuts are like less than 3%. So it's just enough to kind of get a little bit more in balance and create a little bit more excitement in the industry versus, the negative excitement of in regards to interest rates being up almost 7%, but still historically low. All right. The next article here, again, today's theme is going to be very, very heavy on the economy. So today, on this article here, is NAR.realtor. That's where we're coming from. So this is NAR News, the National Association of Realtors. Melissa Dittman Tracy is who wrote this article. And it says, as mortgage rates mostly hold steady, agents say waiting could cost buyers. Okay, so now we're talking about the buyer side. Seller side, we kind of address that. Let's get into kind of what the buyer, what's the advice as real estate agents that we can give to our buyers? What does that look like? And what should we be doing? Okay. Buyers who stay in the market may find greater negotiating power and opportunities to offset the higher borrowing costs. This is what typically will happen when you have sellers that have their homes sitting on the market for a while and they're not getting any offers. Then the agents that have those listings start getting a little bit more creative again. And we've seen this many years, almost every single, cycle of the economy, this kind of rears its head back up. And what we're alluding to here is closing costs and incentives. There's things that sellers begin to do creatively to help buyers buy their homes. And usually it comes to down to not coming out of pocket so much for the money, along with some price reductions, which we already talked about. All right, it says mortgage rates held relatively steady this week, with the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 6.65. We already found out today it was 6.77. According to Freddie Mac, the rate is down slightly from 6.67 last week, but it remains well above the 6% level that some economists say could help reignite housing market activity. And I like how it says some economists, because some would disagree with this. That's a split thing. You lower the interest rate, you end up having more inflation. In some ways, you're seeing this rebalancing happen because the interest rate is holding steady. It creates more certainty in the market, makes everybody feel a little bit better. So I think there's an argument to have on both sides. Anyway, buddy trail. Many buyers appear to be perceiving mortgage rates as too high. Yeah, they're not, guys. This is historical average. It's still below historical average. Mortgage applications for home purchases dropped 2% in the latest week and are 3% lower than a year ago. Also, existing home sales and pending home sales both declined last month as affordability concerns continue to weigh on buyers. So this is still a factor. Even though we're coming closer and closer in line, now the sellers will get creative to try to figure out, how do I capture the buyers that are on the market right now? What can I do to get that buyer to buy my house? I got to get creative now. Let's go on down here. Where buyers may find leverage. This is the key. So if you represent buyers out there, this is something you can be talking to the other agents in your office that have listings. Buyers in the market are finding ways to offset the higher borrowing costs. Sellers are increasingly showing willingness to negotiate, giving buyers more leverage than they had during the frenzied housing market of recent years, says Michelle Price, a real estate professional with Michelle Price Realty Group in Westlake Village, California. She goes on to say this, quote, "We're seeing a credit and repair request we just didn't see before," she says. "Some sellers reportedly are also offering closing cost assistance or mortgage rate buydowns." That's the thing. This is where you start getting creative. So, and this is why when I start talking about like interest rate being the only factor, it's just not. Because if a buyer out there, if a consumer out there just sees the interest rate and they make a decision based solely on that, they can miss out on actually a very lucrative opportunity to buy a house in a market like this. And that's what we're seeing. When you start talking about a seller offering mortgage rate buydowns, closing cost assistance, we're talking about chunks of money that they can allocate to keep money going out of their actual bank. That's a win. That is a win, regardless of what that interest rate is. And if you're only focused on the interest rate, you're missing the leverage that you actually have as a buyer when it comes to these other perks and benefits. The mortgage rate, the interesting thing about mortgage rates is if you can afford that home at that rate, then at any moment that rate goes down to a point where that threshold hits where it's actually cost effective to refinance, you can still change that mortgage rate later. But what you can't do in a different market is get the incentives that the seller is offering in a creative market like this to capture the buyers. So a lot of times there's a win here for a buyer. So it's not time to run away. Farther, Realtor.com found that sellers reduced prices on 20% of active listings in July. Again, see more of an alignment. Meanwhile, waiting for lower rates can be a gamble, says Alex Rodino, a real estate pro with Keller Williams Coastal Area Partners in Savannah, Georgia. Yes, it is a gamble. When's the right time to buy a house? When you need it. Like it's not about necessarily all the finances and stuff. I mean, if you can afford the house you need, you should be going out and buying because you're building equity. You got something that's tangible that you can leverage and be able to adjust and make more money off of later. So if you can afford a house, you should go out and buy. It says this, quote, "If the right home is affordable today and the numbers work under conservative assumptions, that is a stronger position than waiting for a perfect rate that may or may not arrive. If rates improve later, refinancing may be an option. But if rates drop and buyer demand surges, that same buyer may face higher prices and more competition." This is absolutely the case. Hey, Domino, good morning to you as well. Thank you for being here. It's been a while. I was off all last week. Well, not really off all. I was actually working, just wasn't in the office. So I was working, just couldn't do this. I had no time. I had to travel so much. But glad you made it. Glad you made it. Mortgage rates this week, we kind of talked about that already, but you get the idea of this article, what they're actually pointing at here, right? So if you are representing buyers, we need to have these good conversations with our buyers. We do need to be explaining to them like the benefits of buying now. And as buyers agents, we really need to be getting into the weeds a little bit more on the MLS and stuff and seeing what kind of deals and incentives are out there that the sellers are offering. Some of them are doing the mortgage rate buy down. Some of them are offering closing cost assistance. So when you start focusing on the interest rate alone, you miss opportunity. Like right now, right now is kind of a very beautiful spot. We're going into fall. Okay, so that's a big factor. Less competition. There's less buyers on the market in the fall. So if you're a buyer right now, there's an opportunity. Second is you have the pricing. The sellers, based on the statistics, the sellers are getting more reasonable on their pricing, so it's starting to come down on that price. And then third, and this one is the most important one, is there are incentives out there to help you be able to afford that house and get chunks of money to be able to buy that house right now because the seller is competing with other sellers and trying to capture the buyer. So they're getting more creative. So you as an agent, think through this with your buyer. If you know your buyer is not cash heavy, does not have a lot of cash in the bank to be able to afford all the closing costs, and maybe that's the hurdle they're trying to get over. Well, with this happening, there's incentives for these sellers to start offering some concessions back to the buyer to help pay for some of those costs. So when you start seeing a balancing like this in the market, it is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity, regardless of interest rate. That interest rate is one factor. We talked about it. Refinance. Call it a day, right? Call it a day. So there you go. That's everything kind of in a nutshell as far as the buyer side of it. Now, this is interesting. This is Realtor.com again. This was written August 20th. The title of this article is "Homeowners Are Digging In for 5 Years. A Threat to Buyers or a Hidden Lifeline." So now let me just pause for just a second before we get into this article. What have we done? Okay, so we've done two articles. One, we talked about the sellers being more realistic about what's going on in the market. So the seller out there that is needing to sell, the one that wants to sell their house, is going to do what's necessary in this market to sell the house. That's good. They're going to be more reasonable in their pricing. And this is the first time we begin to see these kind of numbers happen. So now we're getting sellers out there that are pricing correctly, are listening to their agents and beginning to price their home correctly. And we've got enough data on the market now to kind of go through and help us as real estate agents to assess the value of that home. We're getting more and more data as the months go by. So that's good for the seller side. Okay, so that's one piece of the puzzle. The other side, we just did that, is the buyer's side. What do we see the buyers? Well, we got the incentives, we've got the buy downs, we've got competition, we got better priced homes, all those type of things. Those two things go hand in hand. Now we come to this little nuanced demographic. And this is why I pulled this article, because this has given us a great overview of the three different scenarios that are technically playing out in our market right now. And this one is kind of the nuanced ones. This is the seller that says, I don't really want to list my home at the price it's at right now. I don't want to take that loss, or I can't afford to take that loss. So maybe, you are a real estate agent, you go in for a listing interview and you have all the data on your side, and the seller sits over there and says, I can't afford to sell it at that. I can't buy the house I want to buy, or whatever the scenario may be. And they just decide now's just not the time to sell. Okay. That is not somebody you kind of write off. That's somebody in the future that will probably be selling, because they've obviously had a little bit of an interest in selling. It's just maybe the timing is just not exactly right, but they're close. And the circumstances is just what's holding them there. And they don't have to sell. They would like to, but they don't have to. Okay. So that's this demographic. So when we get in this article, I want you to think about that demographic. It's the one that's like, I'd really like to sell. I really need my circumstances to change, but I need the financial makeup to be a little bit different for me to do so. Okay, so that's going to be a listing interview you go to. So let's go into this article here. And this is going to give us a good framework about buyer, seller, and the hesitant seller that we see in our market right now. All right, like I said, the title of this is Homeowners Are Digging In for 5 Years, a Threat to Buyers or a Hidden Lifeline. It says these days, many homeowners are committed to improving their homes. Sorry, my phone's vibrating. In fact, Angie's annual State of Home Spending Report discovered that 66% of homeowners plan to make a major home investment within the next 5 years, the highest level recorded in its research. Now, here's the quote. This is by the House Designers CEO, Tammy Crosby. It says, economic pressures, including inflation, high interest rates, and income uncertainty are likely driving this stay put, let's just improve our home mentality. Okay, so that's the premise. So let's just say you're sitting in on a seller. You want listings, but you also want to be that advisor for them. So this is that demographic. If you sit down with them and they say, well, I'm not really ready to sell just yet. I really need this to happen for me to be able to build my house or buy the land I want or buy this type of house or move to a different city, whatever the case may be. I really need these numbers to work. Then what do we do as agents to advise them, right? We can go down all the data, metrics, and everything we possibly can. But this is where we make the argument for what the asset becomes. And that's what's happening here. What can the seller do to bring value back, to help them get where they are? And if we are aware of these type of things, we can help better advise them. So that's the point here. All right. So since inventory levels are currently low, this trend could be an issue in the short term. Then again, the concept of homeowners locking in for the long haul isn't anything new. But what is good news is that this mentality of homeowners may actually benefit buyers down the road. Okay, so this would be our talk track. If I'm going into a listing with a listing agent or a seller as a listing agent, I want to be thinking through this in the future. It's like, well, let's think about how we can position your home to be the best option for the future buyer then. All right. I understand, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that you don't want to sell your house at this. I get it. And I understand your numbers need to work and we're just not there yet. I understand that my numbers don't match up. But let me tell you what I do as a professional. I try to think ahead of the game where the market's actually going. And I want to give you advice on what I think might help you get there, right? And so then we start talking about that. We start talking about the mentality of the future homeowner, the future home buyer. What is it that they're looking at? If and when these homeowners eventually sell, buyers may have access to more updated, well-maintained properties, while sellers could potentially demand higher resale values. Bottom line, we're talking a win-win for everyone involved. Now we're beginning to play the future game. Now, this is where the pressure is slightly on us. And some of you guys love design. If you love design, this becomes naturally easy for you. If you enjoy seeing what trends are doing, And you can see and maybe look in the bigger cities if you're in a more rural area, what the bigger cities are doing. You can look down in your area and see kind of what home decor might be in your area because you can look at big cities. That's a great place to start because what typically happens is your larger metropolis, they embrace design, home aesthetics way before the rural areas do. So you can research there. You can see what the trend is in those bigger markets and then give pictures and examples about what they can do in their home. But again, you have to have the knowledge to be able to advise them correctly. The other thing you can do though is if you live in a big metropolis, here's the thing. Most of those home designs, they come out of Europe. Most of those designs, we tend to follow what the European style tends to be. We put our little spin on it in America, but that tends to be what kind of happens. So all that being the case, this is an opportunity for us to advise a seller in what they can do. Now, it also requires us to kind of understand maybe what the future work-life balance might be, right? Like what improvements can they make to their house? What kind of living conditions are they going to look for? Are basements more important? Or above garage space more important? Like what is the things that they can actually remodel in their house to bring value back? So then you're providing value back to them that will actually help them sell their house 5 years from now. Dominion, I'm thinking about setting up a prepaid option for my sellers. Yeah, there you go. That's a great one. Yeah, elaborate on that. That's interesting. Yeah, creative stuff is always good. That's good. The stay put trend is keeping housing inventory low. This is true. According to July 2026 housing data from Realtor.com, national inventory remains 11.6% below typical 2017 to 2019 levels, even as active listings have increased modestly compared with last year. So true. That shows the market is recovering, but still has ground to make up. Yep. At the same time, 66% of homeowners plan to make a significant home investment within the next several years. They're doing things to their home. Crosby explains that in the short term, homeowners deciding to renovate rather than sell might prolong the inventory issue, limit options, and increase competition for many buyers, especially those on a tighter budget. This low stock and higher interest rates have driven up prices enough that it makes sense for many to wait rather than struggle against unfavorable buying conditions. That's where we're at. So that's that seller. It says, co-founder of Angie Hicks, points out that a major home investment isn't necessarily a direct measure of whether a homeowner intends to move or stay. Hicks notes that major investments can reflect many different goals, from a big renovation or a system upgrade to preparing a home for an eventual sale. What Angie's 2026 State of Home Spending Pulse report does show, however, is that homeowners remain committed to maintaining and improving their homes despite current affordability pressures. We'll skip the graph there. Why future buyers could ultimately benefit. If you're in the market for a new home or think you will be in the near future, this trend can actually benefit you. The silver lining is that continued investments in home improvements can help preserve and improve the nation's existing housing stock. Here's the quote. The fact that so many current owners are holding on to and improving their homes means that future buyers can look forward to well-maintained and newly updated properties that are move-in ready. That's the thing. People are going to invest back into their house. If they live in their house, they're going to invest back in it. The majority of people are going to put more money in it, make it more their own, keep it updated, and keep it looking nice because it's the largest investment that they own. They want to keep it that way, right? So that's typically what happens. So if this is the case, this is where we come in and we start giving the best advice we possibly can. These projects may not always be as visible as major remodel, but they're critical to keeping a home safe, functional, and in good condition. When homeowners consistently address repairs, maintain major systems, and make thoughtful improvements, this allows future buyers to inherit homes that have been better cared for and require less deferred maintenance. Not every investment will always translate directly into a higher sale price, but ongoing upkeep can reduce the likelihood that small problems become larger and more expensive ones. Over time, that benefits current homeowners, future buyers, and the overall quality of the housing supply, adds Hicks. At the end of the day, the short-term inventory constraint could have a positive long-term impact on housing quality. So that's the thing, guys. Like, these are the three different demographics that we see in this market right now. Right? You got the buyer incentives, the buyer, where the affordability is helping. That's come down just a little bit. There's now being incentives offered by the seller, and that's what's happening. Now we got the seller that maybe they not ready to sell, and they can put some of this kind of stuff into it. Sorry, Domino. Sorry, guys. I paused it for a second. My moderator saw your post. I don't know. It flagged it and deleted it. But Domino, I just pulled it back up. The pitch: don't subsidize the sellers that aren't serious. Pay half price, may paying up front. I guess I'm not following the idea. Sorry. The pitch: don't subsidize the sellers that aren't serious. Pay half price, may paying up front. I guess I'm not following. I'm not following. But if you want to post that again and clarify, that'd be great. You can also DM me if you want. I'm intrigued. It's something I want to veg out a little bit if you have time. Okay, very good. Now, I had one more thing I was going to do just to wrap up the show, and see if I can find it. I accidentally closed it down just as a little bit fun. I was going to look at this house. What was it called? It was a really unique house. Star Wars. Yeah, the concrete ball house. This is hilarious. Okay, so here we go. It's just going to be half price. Domino's bringing this up now. It's just going to be half price paid up front instead of contingent upon the sale of the home. That way, the seller's not subsidizing 25% of sellers that price too high and change their mind later. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah. I'm following now. I'm going to highlight that just for everybody to kind of read through that. That's good. Yeah. It's just going to be half price paid up front instead of contingent upon the sale of the home. That way, the seller's not subsidizing 25% of sellers that price too high and change their mind later. Yeah. This is where we get creative. Domino, excellent. Yeah, creativity is so good. Like this is a really good thing. Yeah, when we start having markets like this, creativity kind of begins to flourish. Thank you for that. Great perspective. Okay, this is the last thing. We'll wrap it up just for fun here. Kicks and giggles, guys. This is the unique home category on Realtor.com. I every once in a while have something kind of funny. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I like Star Wars. I like Lord of the Rings. I like that kind of stuff. Look at this house. Let me hold on. People on TikTok can't see. Hold on. Let me I might get flagged, but oh well. There you go. Can you guys see that now? I think you can. Yeah, there we go. So anyway, look at this. It says beachfront concrete ball house in Florida. Looks like it's been pulled from a Star Wars movie. Doesn't it though? I mean, look at this. I mean, kind of wild. Now, I mean, it's probably on the beach, right? Yeah, beachfront. So it's kind of on stilts, you know? But like you have this lounge area underneath and like these archways and it's domed. It says beachfront dwellings are a dime a dozen in Florida, but there is a Pensacola property currently on the market that really stands out from the crowd. So much so that you'd sooner think it was part of a movie set than an ocean adjacent abode. The ball-shaped concrete dome home, which is now on the market for $1.595 million, rises up from the palm trees in a sculptural fashion, blending in seamlessly with the sand beneath it. At first glance, the sandy setting and the bare concrete shell appear very much like the homes in a Star Wars movie, giving the property an almost overworldly feel. Now, let me know in the comments if you would live in this house. Like wildness. Let's see if I can find. You'll drive by many of the homes that are along the beachfront, and you'll see the typical structure: 2-story, 3-story, similar siding, all that. Okay, it's a very unique looking home that we typically don't see in Pensacola. Here we go. I want to see the photos. Yeah, so it looks like there's like some kind of outdoor lounge area down here. The ball-shaped concrete dome home rises up from the palm trees. Yeah, we already read that. There's the view. So it looks like it's like a little inlet here. The home and the half-acre lot it sits on were bought to the market at the end of July, having last changed hands for $310,000 in 2017. And they're asking that much more for it. The dome was built in 2007 Ep.77 using steel reinforced concrete and was never totally finished. Ah, okay, okay. Hughes says not much is known about the home's history and why it was built this way. At the bottom, there's a carport area that was originally going to be enclosed, and there was going to be an elevator installed, but never was, he explains. Adding the elevator shaft remains. So you can add an elevator if you guys want. You need an elevator. It's got an option for it. The Sarah bought the place a few years ago, made a few improvements, and lived in it for a bit before moving out. He has not lived in there for about a year or two, but he still has his own furnishings in there. The somewhat spaceship-looking structure has 3 stories and about 2,700 square feet of what Hugh says is somewhat awkward living space. Yeah, I was just gonna be very awkward. Like anytime you start getting like circular or domes, you're gonna have like a weird wasted space. It's definitely unique looking on the inside, but as far as livability, it is probably not what most people are used to with the way that the walls are curved and everything. The flooring needs to be finished, but the bones are there, waiting for a buyer to add their own preferences. It definitely needs work on the inside, he says. It probably needs to be rearranged and redesigned, the layout. Right now, the way it is, it seems bigger on the outside, but on the inside, it's really only 2 bedrooms and 2 baths. Yeah, see, this is when you start getting into, as cool as it looks, you're getting into like really weird shapes, and you know, it's not square, you lose space. And I mean, look at that. Look at the kitchen. It's kind of cool though. I mean, I don't think it's too bad though, but I can understand the problem with it looking so large, but not really having much space. But what a killer Airbnb. Killer Airbnb. Okay, this would be like the elevator shaft right there. So that's probably this dome, this circular thing right there. But that would be like the elevator shaft. It's got an external door. Okay, there are 2 bathrooms in the property, which has been decorated with blue walls. So this is probably upstairs, I guess, and you got like a little bathroom there. I mean, it would be a really cool like Airbnb. Little lounge area upstairs. I don't know what kind of view it has. That's it. That's all the pictures. Would you live in it? Would you live in this house? I wouldn't live in it. I would probably be apt to do an Airbnb with it though. I feel like that would be good, but I think the price. I think it still needs work, needs flooring, that kind of stuff, and I think that's a big factor. But anyway, that was fun. Guys, we did good. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Guys, I did 4 articles today and a 5th technically. And then I still have time left, so I'm ahead of schedule today on a Monday. This is good. Hey guys, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed coming back and being back active here on live streaming. You know, it's funny. You would think, I kept thinking, well, maybe this break will make me feel good, like you know, the break from having to prep for this and that kind of stuff. And I missed it. I did not. It wasn't like I dreaded it at all. This morning I woke up like, man, I can't wait to actually go live, and I missed it all last week. It wasn't as refreshing. I enjoy being here. I enjoy doing this. And it does twofold, like having you guys here, but man, it keeps me, you know, informed. And I think that helps. Like it makes me have to show up, have to study, have to be aware of what's going on in my industry. And that I'm extremely grateful for. And I get to do it with other people. That's even the better part of this whole thing. I'm not doing it by myself. I used to do this by myself every single morning. This is way more fun. Way more fun. Hopefully you're getting value out of it. If anything, we get to hang out and laugh a little. All right, guys, that's it. I will be back. So tomorrow I'm live streaming again. As of right now, I might be able to live stream every day this week except for Friday. Monday through Thursday is always my plan anyway, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're available, come, you know, watch, hang out. If you can't come at that time, these are pre-recorded. They record this. It's on my YouTube channel in the live section. You can go back and watch it anytime you want. Please like, comment, share, and all that kind of stuff. Consider subscribing, follow me, all that. I'd greatly appreciate that. Greatly appreciate that. I'm trying to build this thing up and build a good community here. So anyway, let me say my closing line and we'll wrap this show up and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bobby, great show. Have a blessed day. You too, my friend. Hope all is going well for you. Keep up the training. Keep up the hard work in real estate. Hope you're enjoying it. Glad you're here. Appreciate you greatly. All right. That is Real Estate Brief for today. If you found this helpful, please consider hitting the like button to tell YouTube you would like to see more of this type of content. Consider subscribing, follow me on TikTok, and to join a community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is relationship focused first. There's always more I could be talking about, but I did pretty good today. We'll see you tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. Take care, guys. Be successful.